Hello and happy World Book Day. I've gone for my costume today. If you don't know, it's a Willy Wonka from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Now, bad news is I'd lost my hat. So I did try and make one, but it didn't turn out brilliantly. And when I put it on, my family just all laughed at me. So I have a tall black hat. It hasn't got a brim on it, but I'd look really silly. But anyway, I thought I would read for you for World Children's Day today, chapter 14 of Roald Dahl's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which is actually entitled Mr. Willy Wonka, as today's little bit of reading. So, chapter 14, Mr. Willy Wonka. Mr. Wonka was standing alone just inside the open gates of the factory. And what an extraordinary little man he was. He had a black top hat on his head, and he wore a tailcoat made of beautiful plume-coloured velvet. His trousers were bottle green, his gloves were a pearly grey, and in one hand he carried a fine gold top walking cane. Mine's silver top, but close enough. Covering his chin, there was a small, neat, pointed black beard, a goatee, and his eyes were the most marvellously bright. They seemed to be sparkling and twinkling at you all the time. The whole face, in fact, was alight with fun. Oh, and how clever he looked. How quick and sharp and full of life. He kept making jerky little movements with his head and taking everything in with those bright, twinkly eyes. He was like a squirrel in the quickness of his movements, like a quick, clever old squirrel in the park. Suddenly, he did a funny little skipping dance in the snow, and he spread his arms wide and he smiled at the 5 children who were clustered near the gates, and he called out, "Welcome, my friends! Welcome to the factory!" His voice was high and fluty. "Will you come forward one at a time, please?" he called out. "And bring your parents. Then show me your golden ticket and give me your name. Who is first?" The big fat boy stepped up. "I'm Augustus Gloop," he said. "Augustus!" cried Mr. Wonka, seizing his hand and pumping it up and down with terrific force. "My dear boy, how good to see you! Delighted, charmed, overjoyed to have you here with us. And these are your parents. How nice. Come in, that's right. Step through the gates." Mr. Wonka was clearly just as excited as everybody else. "My name," said the next child to go forward, "is Veruca Salt." "My dear Veruca, how do you do? What a pleasure this is. You do have an interesting name, don't you? I always thought that Veruca was the sort of wart that you got on the side of your foot. But I must have been wrong, mustn't I? How pretty you look in that lovely mink coat. I'm so glad you could come. Dear me, this is going to be such an exciting day. I do hope you enjoy it. I am sure you will. I know you will. Your father, how are you, Mr. Salt and Mrs. Salt? Overjoyed to see you. Yes, the ticket is quite good order. Please, come in." The next 2 children, Violet Beauregard and Mike TV, came forward to have their tickets examined and then to have their arms practically pumped off their shoulders by the energetic Mr. Wonka. And last of all, a small, nervous voice whispered, "Charlie Bucket." "Charlie!" cried Mr. Wonka. Well, so there you are. You're the one who found the ticket only yesterday, aren't you? Yes, I read all about it in this morning's papers, just in time, my dear boy. I'm so glad, I'm so happy for you. And this, Your grandfather? Delighted to meet you, sir. Overjoyed, enraptured, enchanted. Yes, all right, excellent. Is everybody in now? 5 children. Yes, good. Now, will you please follow me? Our tour is about to begin, but do keep yourselves together. Please don't wander off by yourselves. I shouldn't like to lose any of you at this stage of the proceedings. Oh dear, me no. Charlie glanced back over his shoulder and saw the great iron entrance gates closing behind him. The crowds on the outside were still pushing and shouting. Charlie took a last look at them. Then as the gates closed with a clang, all sight of the outside world disappeared. Here we are, cried Mr. Wonka, trotting along in front of the group through the big red door. Please, that's right, it's nice and warm inside. I have to keep it warm inside the factory because of the workers. My workers are used to extremely hot climate. They can't stand the cold. They'd perish if they went outside in this weather. They'd freeze to death. But who are these workers? Asked Augustus Gloop. All in good time, my dear boy, said Mr. Wonka, smiling at Augustus. Be patient. You should see everything as we go along. All of you now, inside. Good. Would you mind closing the door? Thank you. Charlie Bucket found himself standing in a long corridor that stretched away in front of him as far as he could see. The corridor was so wide that a car could easily have been driven along it. The walls were a pale pink. The lighting was soft and pleasant. How lovely and warm, whispered Charlie. I know. What a marvellous smell, answered Grandpa Joe, taking a long, deep sniff. All the most wonderful smells in the world seemed to be mixed up in the air around him. The smell of roasting coffee and burned sugar and melting chocolate and mints and violets and crushed hazelnuts and apple blossom and caramel and lemon peel. And far away in the distance, from the heart of the great factory, came a muffled roar of energy, as though some monstrous, gigantic machine were spinning its wheels at breakneck speed. Now, this, my dear children, said Mr. Wonka, raising his voice above the noise, this is the main corridor. Will you please hang your coats and your hats on the pegs over there? And then follow me. That's it. That's the way. Good. Everybody ready? Come on. Here we go. He trotted off rapidly down the corridor with the tails of his plume-coloured velvet coat flapping behind them, and the visitors all hurried after him. It was quite a large party of people when you come to think of it. There was 9 grown-ups, the 5 children, 14 in all, so you can imagine there was a good deal of pushing and shoving as they hustled and bustled down the passage, trying to keep up with the swift little figure in front of them. Come on, cried Wonka. Get a move on, please. We'll never get round today if you dawdle like this. So he turned right off the main corridor into another slightly narrower passage. Then he turned left, then left again, then right, then left, then right, and then left. The place was like a gigantic rabbit warren, with passages leading this way and that way in every direction. Don't you let go of my hand, Charlie, whispered Grandpa Joe. Notice how all the passengers are sloping downwards, called out Wonka. We are now going underground. All of the most important rooms in my factory are deep below the surface. Why is that? Somebody asked. There wouldn't be nearly enough space for them on top, answered Mr. Wonka. These rooms are going to be enormous. They're larger than football fields. No building in the world could be big enough to house them. But down here, underneath the ground. We've got all the space we want. There's no limit, so long as I hollow it out. Mr. Wonka turned right, then he turned left, then he turned right again. The passengers were sloping steeper and steeper downhill. Then suddenly, Mr. Wonka stopped. In front of him there was a shiny metal door. The party crowded around, and on the door, in large letters, it said, "The Chocolate Room." Well, there you go. Chapter 14 of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl. I hope you enjoyed that one as part of our World Book Day celebrations. If you've never read this story, you have to read it. Go back to the beginning and read it. It's a great book. Hopefully that's got you a little bit excited about some of the things that may be happening to these characters. What do you think will happen to them next? What will happen to Charlie? What about Augustus Gloop or Veronica Salt? What's going to happen to these people, do we think? And as for Mr. Wonka, he seemed a little bit crazy if you ask me, but who knows? Maybe he's got a grand plan all worked out. Read and find out. Happy World Book Day, everybody.